Unsere mutter, Unsere vater aka Generation War is a German miniseries where 5 friends each go their own way at the beginning of World War II. One of the friends becomes a dutiful patriotic officer in the Wehrmacht, his reluctant brother a soldier. The naive girl becomes a nurse while another girl wants to become a famous singer. And then we have the 5th friend who is a Jew and already sees what his country is turning into. Over the course of 3 episodes we follow these 3 friends as they each see their side of the war. The naive hopeful youth that offer their life and livelihoods for their country go through some very sobering experiences. Almost all aspects of the war are shown to the viewer and all, of course, from a nuanced perspective of the German. This is an incredibly well done series, and although you already know where certain things are going, like with the Jewish friend for example, it's an incredible look into what life probably was like in that era and how this war, the patriotism, nationalism, fascism, extremism and others does to a people, a country, a society. The series is very reminiscent of another German pre-World War II series called Babylon Berlin, and I would suggest watching both these series as it almost feels part of the same narrative. Generation War is a must-see series that delves into the other side of the coin from another perspective, the German one. It's compelling, it's well made, well acted, emotional, dramatic, exciting and more. It is in short, a must-see. Check it out as soon as you can. I cannot recommend it enough. Smash that. A while back I reviewed Babysitters, about a young girl turning the innocent babysitting job into a full-fledged escort service where dads can have sexy time with what we'll say are babysitters. Cougard Inc is pretty much the male version of that. We follow a young guy who has gotten in a lot of trouble as he enters a boarding school. When money problems hit the surface he encounters a lonely and sad MILF in a bar. Cause apparently that's what lonely and sad MILFs do. And he got lucky and got some good times out of it. And of course then you decide to ask that hot MILF if she has friends, and of course she does, so a male escort service where tweens service hot lonely housewives starts up. Needless to say stuff goes wrong, but the boys and the MILFs have a lot of fun in the meantime. And unlike Babysitters, this movie is a lot more fun. Maybe cause it's boys and they are all about the party, but I thought girls just want to have fun, yet Babysitters were all drama and this was all catchy. Party, good time moments with a little drama. Even the conclusion that you can see coming from a mile off is all good, bro. Men fight for a couple of minutes, women fight for life. Gender differences confirmed. Cougars Incorporated is a fun movie, and despite it being a little unrealistic, I'm sure this happened at some point but with less attractive people. Check that. Crybaby Lane is a Nickelodeon movie that, for me, had an intro by Melissa Joan Hart, one of my teenage crushes I had many dates with. And with this lovely memory of teenage lust in my back head, I went into this children's horror movie, or scary movie, about a couple of kids hearing a ghost story and accidentally making the story come alive as a malevolent entity takes control of their town. This is a movie for kids, with kids and some famous actors to give credence. It's very simple and of course not too scary, but I think it's effective enough to put some scares into a child without traumatizing them. There's of course teenage romance and enough action to be a wee bit envious of the characters, so that you too, as a teen, can dream of something more. Escapism. It's for all ages. Watching this as an adult though wasn't all that bad. It made me remember simpler days, even though they weren't simple when we were experiencing them. Crybaby Lane is what you expect it to be. A simple movie for simple times. Watch it and step back into a lost era. Check that. A girl dies and she is put in the morgue. But suddenly she comes back. She is not alive and she isn't a zombie. She's just undead. Her family doesn't appreciate that she's back, and people around her of course object to the constant state of decay she is in. The movie of course has a conclusion, but it had me pretty bored most of the time. It also doesn't help that her family has a screeching woman as a mother, but suffice to say that she doesn't remain a pacifist the whole movie. Dead Girl Walking wasn't a good movie for me. It's bland, filmed in a very ugly color or texture and doesn't offer anything that's all too exciting. If you want a movie about an undead person, there's a surprising amount of those that probably are a lot better. Dead Like Me and I Zombie are two that pop up in my head. Dead Girls Walk a Lot. Apparently this one is just a shambling mess though. Check that. Whore by Ken Russell is a direct answer to Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts, showcasing how glorious and fun it is to be a prostitute. Teresa Russell plays the main character and she breaks the fourth wall often to explain to you, the viewer, that being a whore isn't all that great after all. With an enormous level of cynicism and sarcasm, she experiences plenty of things that prostitutes have to endure, from nasty clients, pimp fans to the big, cocky dudes who think they are hotshots. Whore is a comedy about something that isn't really laughing matter. It's filmed like a late-night episodes of the Red Shoe Diaries without any of the sex. It's poignant but not as charming as the movie it is criticizing, which is most likely the point. But due to this, it's also less interesting. Teresa Russell is a pretty lady, but that's not Julia Roberts, and there is definitely no Richard Gere in this movie. Regardless though, Whore is a nice movie to pick in between something. Hell, maybe you can watch it after Pretty Woman just for the heck of it. Check that. Holy Moses is a spoof film from 1980 with none other than Dudley Moore, who plays a character on a vacation in the Promised Land, even though that Promised Land looks a wee bit like an American rock desert and nothing like I imagine Egypt and surroundings to be. Together with a woman who was accompanying him on the tour bus, they discover lost scrolls telling the story of a man who walked in the shadow of Moses, a man which time hath forgot. What we get after that is an anachronistic and comedic flashback into the world of a man who thinks he was God's chosen but ends up being the brunt of cosmic spot-tailing behind Moses. The movie is funny but not laugh out loud. There are some good moments, but unfortunately it's not funny enough to keep you invested the whole run. Dudley Moore, as always, is as dry as the deserts he's supposed to walk, which saves the movie a little, but he doesn't get a lot to work with. Overall, Holy Moses is a mediocre comedy that's still better than most comedies that are made these days, and with a religious topic without ridiculing it so much that it becomes spiteful. Check that. In yet another Italian post-apocalyptic Mad Max ripoff, we get yet another group of people trying to get something to survive the wasteland they live in. In this case, they are trying to get water and of course are being chased by gangs of leather and fur-wearing, chain-wielding and monster car and bike-driving baddies. Due to this fact, it's a little bit hard to distinguish between movies, and you could even say that they are all playing out in the same universe. In Exterminators of the year 3000, you do get a special car with nifty features and unlikely allies. There's a masculine man and a hot woman who's quite the badass. Very simple movie, enjoyable, but if you have seen many of these like I have, not very memorable. Check that. World War I movie The Lost Battalion is based on a real-life story about a battalion who is sent into enemy lines under false pretenses and gets surrounded by Germans who lay siege on the 500 soldiers stuck in the middle. It's another story of the small guy fighting against all odds against a massive enemy. And, as mentioned before, it actually happened in October 1918 in the Argonne Forest in Belgium during the closing weeks of WW1. This movie has everything you can expect from it: arrogant generals, dutiful officers, brotherly bonds among soldiers, honorable German enemies, gunfights, explosions, and even some airplane stuff and flamethrowers. It's a little look into the horrific war that World War I was, although it's still a bit clean in its depiction of the violence and atrocities that occurred in that era. The Lost Battalion is a great underrated war movie that's definitely worth a watch. Check that. The age-old story of Robinson Crusoe is known far and wide by the whole of humanity and has been remade many times in several forms. For those who don't know, Robinson Crusoe is a story of a man who shipwrecks on an island with his dog and needs to survive. He meets an indigenous man called Friday who helps him and eventually gets attacked by a rival tribe, which makes life on the island even more difficult. Oh, and without spoiling the expected, they get saved in the end. Robinson Crusoe on Mars tells that same story but replaces the island with Mars, the dog with a monkey, Friday with an alien, the rival tribe with other aliens, and water with air. That's about it. This isn't a bad movie. This isn't a good movie. It's merely a retelling of a classic story in a typically cheesy mid-60s science fiction DA tilde copyright core. And that's about it. Check that. Courtney Cox became famous from the long-running comedy show Friends, but her career never truly took off the way people would have expected. November is one of the movies she did that unfortunately didn't swing her into the movie business even more. Sophie Jacobs, played by Courtney Cox, and her boyfriend are driving around and require something from a night store. While waiting for her boyfriend to return, the store gets robbed and a lot of people, including the boyfriend, get killed. She tries to come to terms with what happened and is plagued by her own guilt, but as she developed migraines it is slowly revealed that something sinister went down. November is a mystery story about a woman dealing with her own guilt and trying to figure out what happened. It's also about the stages of grief, but unfortunately that's not super clear near the ending. The problem this movie has is that there's a lot of back and forth between what we think is the present versus what happened in the past. By the time you get to the actual ending, you have to be ready to understand that what happens isn't yet another flashback. I won't spoil the ending, and in a way it's quite clever, but it's not too when you see it first. The movie bombed badly in the circuit and could have done a bit better if the script and editing were a bit more cleverness, and a wee bit less blue hue. Check that.